I recognize the senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, when I was in grade school, my dad, the mechanic, would point to the schoolhouse doors and say, son, if you go through those doors and you work hard, you can do almost anything because we're so fortunate to live here in the United States. He was a big fan of public schools, giving an opportunity for every child to thrive. And I took his advice to heart and went through those doors and studied hard and loved the vision of opportunity for every child in America. But the fact is that many careers require more than K-12 education. And the cost of college has exploded. When I was graduating from high school, if you worked a summer job at minimum wage, which was about $3 an hour, you could save enough money living at home to pay your tuition at any of the public universities in the state of Oregon. Well, try paying your tuition today. A year of tuition based on minimum wage working the summer. We are in a situation where college is so much more important now than it was decades ago to so many parts of opportunity in our society, and yet it's so much more expensive. It's a huge barrier for opportunity for every child. Not so long ago, my children are 29, 27, not so long ago, they were in grade school in my neighborhood, my blue-collar neighborhood, and folks would say to me, Jeff, I'm not sure I should encourage my son or my daughter to go to college because I'm afraid they're going to end up with a mountain of debt. And that debt's going to be a millstone around their neck. Instead of creating opportunity, obstructing opportunity. And indeed, we've seen the challenge in which, because of the cost of college, our sons and daughters are marrying later. Because of debt from college, our sons and daughters are finding it much more difficult to be able to buy a home, which have been the primary source of family wealth for middle-class Americans. So we should do something about this. But unfortunately, my Republican colleagues want to make college more expensive. I wish you could come to my blue-collar community, get out of your gated communities where you live with people affluent enough to just pay their sons and daughters' education and understand how expensive college is as a barrier to opportunity here in the United States of America. Specifically, they want to make it harder for children to afford college by eliminating income-driven repayment plans for borrowers. Income-driven repayment plans help folks responsibly pay off their student loans by basing a borrower's monthly payments on their income and their family size. Sounds like common sense to me. One of these income-driven repayment plans is the Saving on a Valuable Education, or SAVE plan, which more than 8 million Americans are enrolled in. But in the reconciliation bill, the proposed bill that we will be voting on later this week, it's slashed. And Senate Help Committee Republicans are attempting to slash these loans in their portion of the reconciliation bill as well. As a result of these cuts, the Student Borrower Protection Center calculates that the typical borrower with a college degree will pay about $250 more per month. Now, if you're coming from affluence, you're like $250 a month, oh, less than 10 bucks a day, not a problem. But you know, it is a massive problem for children across America, our young adults across America, for our families who are not among those millionaires and billionaires that so often inhabit this Senate chamber. Why do Republicans want to get rid of programs that help individuals and working families, help lift them up and responsibly pay back what they owe, and instead want working families to believe that perhaps college is not a possibility because of the mountain of debt it will create on their children. It's a families lose, billionaires win. This attack on affordable ways to pay for college. It's another example of the big, beautiful betrayal in which this reconciliation bill puts families down and helps the rich get richer. Families lose, billionaires win. That's not a good theme for America. It's not good policy, not even good politics. How about we work together on families thrive and billionaires pay their fair share? I've introduced the Savings Opportunity and Affordable Repayment Act, or the SOAR Act, with Senator Kaine, with Leader Schumer, with Senator Sanders, to codify and expand the SAVE plan and help borrowers in 4 important ways. First, it will allow more low-income borrowers to qualify for income-driven repayment plans, increasing the number of students who will be able to responsibly pay back their loans. Second, it protects borrowers from runaway interest. Third, it incentivizes former students to keep paying their loans rather than default by shortening the timeline for loan forgiveness from a maximum of 25 years to 15 years. You know, CBO did a report on this back in 2020, and what they found is that those who participate in an income-driven repayment plan are half as likely to default as people who don't. So it becomes a win-win. More money gets paid back to the Treasury, not less. Finally, it will help many more borrowers by making them eligible for these programs by including Parent Plus borrowers and borrowers with federal family education loans. We know that the SAVE plan and other income-driven repayment plans work. They increase repayment rates, they reduce default rates, they lower costs for families, and they create a vision for our young folks that, yes, you can afford to go to college here in the United States of America. No, it won't create a mountain of debt that will be a millstone around your neck. Don't we want to send that message of opportunity to all of our young folks so they can aspire to their dreams, so they can reach their highest potential, so they can return their success in helping their entire community and our entire nation thrive? Yes, of course we do. So colleagues on both sides of the aisle, let's join together in the vision of families thrive and billionaires pay their fair share. And let's do that by passing the SOAR Act. So, Mr. President, I propose that the Senate proceed to consideration of the SOAR Act. And to give you the precise technical language for that, as if in legislative session and notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions be discharged from further consideration as Senate Bill 1220, and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. Further, the bill can be considered read and a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
To object.
Senator from Louisiana.
Mr. President, I rise to object to S-1220, a bill seeking to transfer the burden of $230 billion in student debt to the 87% of Americans who chose not to go to college or already responsibly paid off their loans. To be clear, this legislation does not differentiate between those trapped with overwhelming debt and those who could easily pay back their loans. If this bill is enacted, a majority of those who borrowed money to get a bachelor's degree would not have to pay it back, even the principal on their loans. 91% of new student debt would be eligible for reduced payments, and it would be subsidized by everybody watching on C-SPAN right now. There is no free lunch. These policies are as unfair as they are irresponsible. Where is the relief for the Louisiana truck driver who took out a loan to buy a truck? What about the hardworking mom who paid off her student loans but now struggles to afford her mortgage? Would this legislation give those Americans relief? No. It gives them a greater burden. The truck driver, that mom, they're on the hook for those who decided to go to college to get a degree to make more money. They would be on the hook for that, as well as their own cost of living. Now, I'm sure my Democratic colleagues will argue that some of those students are trapped with overwhelming debt, and this legislation will help them get out of it. But this bill does nothing to address the broken higher education system that created the overwhelming debt in the first place. It doesn't address the rising cost at colleges and universities. And let's point out that in the last 30 years, tuition and fees at private nonprofit colleges have risen by 75%. At public four-year institutions, increased by 102%. Meanwhile, according to a nonpartisan analysis, 23% of bachelor's degree programs, 43% of master's degree programs have a negative return on investment. What does that mean? It means you spend a lot of money to get your degree, but you don't actually increase your ability to earn more money because of that degree, and along the way, you get into student loan debt. We need real solutions to fix this broken system, and Republicans provide these solutions. As chair of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, I'm leading my committee's portion of the One Big Beautiful Bill, legislation that will make transformative changes to the higher education system. First, it reforms student loan repayment plans that cost American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. This includes fixing our income-driven repayment program that is targeted to help struggling Americans. Second, it increases affordability of higher education by eliminating inflationary loan programs that evidence shows drives higher tuition prices and cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Third, it restores accountability so that universities are not receiving federal loan dollars for programs that leave students worse off than if they had never entered that program. And lastly, this legislation increases access to career or technical education through establishing Workforce Pell. A young person from Louisiana who wants to be a master welder doesn't need to attend a four-year university, but they can now use their Pell Grant to attend a technical school, giving them the skills for a successful career. That is a wise investment of federal student loan dollars. Unlike S1220, the legislation before us today, Senate Republicans are putting forth real solutions to address the root causes of student loan crisis. I look forward to working with my colleagues to get the One Big Beautiful Bill across the finish line so we can fix the broken higher education system and ensure that every American can succeed. Mr. President, Democrats' legislation is unfair to the hundreds of millions of tax-paying Americans who will be forced to bear the burden of paying off someone else's student debt. It would make our higher education problems worse, not better, and for those reasons, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President,
The senator from Oregon.
I enjoy working with my colleague from Louisiana, and he's made several points worth noting. He's noted that this strategy of enabling people to pay back their loan according to their income doesn't solve the large issue of why our colleges cost so much. And he's noted that it doesn't do anything about predatory college programs that charge a lot and deliver little. Now, I was here when Tom Harkin led the effort to shut down the for-profit programs that often weren't even accredited, but were signing up veterans like crazy and ripping them off, leaving them with massive debt. And we couldn't get any help from across the aisle to take that on. So he's right, it won't solve everything. But the idea that you pay according to your income, and as your income goes up, you pay back more. And the default rate is cut in half. So the federal government actually takes in more money than it would otherwise. And students believe that they do have an opportunity despite the high cost of college, because that's just not going to be fixed overnight. You know, Germany, tuition is zero. Germany has said every child should have the opportunity to thrive. But here in America, we make it so the rich have that opportunity, and ordinary families in my blue-collar community are going, we don't think our children can afford to go to college. That hurts all of us. It hurts every child whose dreams are crushed because of these high costs of college. I'm happy to work with my colleague from Louisiana on ideas on how we lower the cost of college. But we've got a lot of folks going to college right now. Let's help these students know that they can go through those doors as a freshman, and if they thrive, they're going to pay back their loans fast. And if they don't thrive so much in a higher income job or it's a public service job, they'll pay it back more slowly, but they'll never have to default. I think it's a vision worth continuing to work on, because our higher education system is not working as well as the system in many other countries that are saying every child will have an opportunity. I believe, like my father did, like my mother did, of America as a land of opportunity for every child, not just the children of the rich. Thank you, Mr. President.